Welcome to Blackhawks Insider, the official podcast of the Chicago Blackhawks, presented by ChevyDrivesChicago.com. Drive what Kane and Taves drive. I'm Chris Vosters. Coming up on the podcast, we sit down with not only Max Domi, but his father Ty, the enforcer, as well. We tell some behind-the-scenes stories of the father's trip to Southern California and look forward to retiring Marian Hossa's number 81. Much more coming up on the podcast, presented by ChevyDrivesChicago.com. Drive what Kane and Taves drive. Welcome into the latest episode of Blackhawks Insider. I'm Chris Vosters, joined by my co-hosts Colby Cohen and Caley Chelios. Guys, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
You're really
it's the second time I've got to hear you sing, Chris. You're getting better and better. Go Snow. I love it.
Thank you. Brings out the smiles on his face. Just look at him right now.
Yeah, I know. I'm not Miguel Esparza giving his Elvis rendition, but I can pick a tune every now and then. But all kidding aside, snow is here, maybe or maybe not to stay, but definitely feels like winter is on the way, and Thanksgiving as well. But Colby, I'm noticing a new background on your end. Where are you at? Change of scenery?
Change of scenery is right. You guys, we moved over the last week. Stayed in the city, but we moved. Won't give away too many details. Just don't want any angry fans showing up at my front door.
No picketers.
But, no, exactly. None of the above. But seeing how excited you are about snow and Caley, I'm a little thrown off by that. But you guys were just in California. You were just hanging out with palm trees, and you were just on the father's trip, which I know both of you really enjoy. Caley, you said it's your favorite trip of the year. Chris, I got to meet your dad, Chris, before you went on the father's trip, and I just assume your dad is probably still ear to ear smiling with how excited he was about the father's trip.
He is. He texted me about it again yesterday, just saying how much fun he had and what a monster trip it was. And on a personal note, thank you to both of you, Colby and Caley. I know that he was really excited to meet both of you, and you each took the time to not only introduce yourselves, but really have some in-depth and meaningful conversation with him. And he's still raving about it, thinks the world of you two, thinks that you're both so cool and so nice and so friendly. So I really appreciate you both helping make my dad's father's trip a great experience. And, quite frankly, I went into it thinking that it was going to be a lot of fun, but honestly, it exceeded my expectations. It was just really meaningful to develop the relationships with the players and the Blackhawks staff and their dads as well. Everyone's guards down a little bit when their dad's around, and it was just a really, really great time both on and off the ice. So, Caley, I know you've been part of dad's trips before. What did you think of this one?
Yeah, it was nice to actually have my dad on the trip for the first time. It worked out great. He was in LA, and in the past, my dad has always loved bringing his dad. He's brought my brothers before on trips, which was pretty cool for some of the guys who couldn't bring their dads. They had uncles, nephews, sons, brothers. So it's just cool. The Hawks did a great job at traveling over 100 people on this trip. I've never seen that many people travel, so people from all over the place, and it was great to see my dad. We got to watch the game in LA together, and I went to Malibu where he's got a house and hosted some sponsors and some friends. So it always works out well when family and work come together. And I got to talk to your dad, Chris, in the suite, and I got some scoops, which was a lot of fun on young Vosters.
I didn't hear about this.
I didn't tell you about it. He said
she was waiting for the public airwaves to talk about it.
Oh, gosh.
I was.
Caley.
You know what? It just reminded me of it. We talked a lot about young Chris, and since you were little, you had the Fisher-Price microphone, and you were just destined to be a broadcaster. I mean, nobody was a bigger sports fan. You won radio contests. Great student, no surprise there. So he was extremely proud of you and proud to be a part of that trip, which was really cool for me to see. Having just met you last year, Chris, and then getting to know your dad, it just, like you said, you let your guard down a little bit with your dad around. The players feel a bit more comfortable. And I have to say, too, like Max and Ty together, Mr. Kane and Ty Domi together, just it was a lot of fun. There's a lot of good stories that came out of this trip.
Well, Caley, you sit there and watching a game with your dad. I would love to be a fly on the wall for that because obviously your dad's a Hall of Famer, one of the most legendary players who ever played the game. So when you're watching a game with him, is it how is it father-daughter? Is it coworkers? Is it like what's the vibe and are you talking about the game? Are you guys breaking it down? Like I just would be curious to hear like how his mind processes a hockey game.
Yeah, full breakdown. I mean, it's more because I want to take advantage of every opportunity I can. So if I get to sit there and evaluate the game with him, it sharpens my mind. So we just break it down the whole time. And then my sister, who was there, she's 27, living in California, doesn't really know. Hockey just never happened for her. She was really bad. And she never quite understood the rules. So the dynamic of, like, my father and I, and then my sister trying to chime in with, like, zero interest in half of it is a good dynamic. So maybe next time we'll put, like, a GoPro in front of us. But definitely helps having him shape my mind. So if I can watch a game with him and we can talk about it, it's nice. Every dad kind of has their own way of watching their son, though. So my dad and I could talk the whole period. Athanasiu's dad by himself in the corner, like everybody kind of has their own thing. Nobody talks to each other during the period. It's like all business, dialed in, not time to socialize. So I always enjoy that part about the dads too, like who has their own little nuances and what they do while they watch their sons play. It's nerve-wracking.
It's stressful, Caley. Like I don't think I ever. I mean, obviously, I'm not a parent yet, and so I can't like fully appreciate it. But when I have retired and now my closest friends still play, I find myself anytime I'm watching them even feeling stressed out. Like when I would see, any of my old college roommates play in the playoffs in the last couple of years. Watching them, it's stressful. I mean, it's hard to even enjoy it at times because you feel the stress of not wanting to see them turn a puck over, get beat one-on-one, miss an assignment. Just knowing that when they go back to the bench, they're probably going to get, their lunch eaten by the coach. So I can only imagine what it's like, to be a parent watching their kid at this high of a level when the stakes are, so high. So I'm not surprised to hear that from you, Caley and Chris, about how stressed out the parents are watching their kids.
Well, we've got an interview with Max Domi and his dad, Ty, coming up later on in this episode. And Caley and I pre-taped it with Max and Ty on the father's trip. We were in Anaheim at the time. And Caley, my favorite part, I think, about the interview was hearing about the nonverbal language that fathers and sons have, or fathers and daughters have while they're watching their kids play.
Just a look.
Just a look, or sometimes a signal. And Ty Domi and Max had some really interesting stories about your dad, Caley, as a coach, and kind of the hand signals that Coach Chris Chelios would have from the bench. And I really got a kick out of learning about that sort of nonverbal side of the game.
Even in the suite, like he whistled at me like I was still 13 on the ice. like I was like, excuse me, it's a suite. Like you can't whistle at me in here. But it was funny, and I thought it was funny too. Like we'll get into that interview, and Ty talks about going on the glass to see Max, and Mr. Kane goes on the glass every single time to see Pat before a game in warm-ups. He gets the puck. It's kind of his thing he does every time. But when he asked Ty to go, his reaction was like, I'm not going on the glass. Like, Max was like, fat chance. Like, absolutely not. You do not want to have your dad looking at you like mano-a-mano before a game, during a game, watching and evaluating you, because that's all you're going to see the whole time. So you're right. In the interview, it was funny how Max goes into it, but my dad was the same way. He sat on the glass by himself behind one of the goaltenders. Yep. Every single game, and it's just menacing. If you have a bad game or a good game, it's great, but a bad game, it might be the worst. And it was funny how similar Ty and my dad were in how they watch games, and then obviously all the nonverbals that we got to go over in the interview about how just coaching the whole way through.
Well, Caley, I can second the dad standing behind the net. I mean, my whole minor hockey career, was my dad's spot. Never with anybody else, never made a noise, and never really even hand signaled. All he had to do was give me a facial expression, and I knew what I was in store for, the rest of the way, whether it was going to be the silent treatment, whether it was going to be the, pity treatment or what was coming next. But good times. It did sound like it was it sounded in all seriousness, it sounded like a father's trip that, was well planned, well executed, and it was a good time. And hey, look, the hockey was pretty good too. The Hawks go out to the West Coast. They obviously lose a buzzer beater. None of us were working. We were all actually just watching that game. So obviously we're getting it from a little bit of a different vantage point. Always tough to beat a team twice within a week, even if it's not back to back. So the fact that the Hawks were able to take 3 out of 4 points from the LA Kings was, I would consider that to be a success. And then they go into Anaheim. They don't play well for the first half the game or third of the game. And Caley, they still are able to win that game out on the West Coast.
Yeah, I can't say I was surprised that they came out a little flat. You just kind of felt that coming with how long this road trip was. And, travel days were a bit longer than expected. Dads were there. So the start wasn't surprising. Anaheim also not surprised to see them get off to such a strong start with the season they've had, coming off back-to-back losses. But you're right. How about Jared Tenorti scoring 2 goals in front of his dad, who was hyped after the game for it, drinking some root beers.
Former NHLer, too.
Former NHLer, and Mike Gapsky, the medical trainer for the Blackhawks, been there 36 years. I couldn't believe that at one point he had Jarrett's dad in the NHL. He had Troy Murray, and then my dad, and now all of their kids are either in the NHL in some capacity or on the trip. So kind of a weird moment for Mike Gapsky as well, and making him feel a little old, I guess. Like, we were talking about stories of when we would play in the locker room as kids and some of the injuries we sustained. Gapper was there for us. So great job anyway by the Hawks. And Gapsky, obviously, that story was pretty funny to me. But the dads, Tenorti's dad, Philip Roos's dad, who we got to know a bit better too, the D factoring in was great. And, unfortunately, they couldn't really sustain much momentum going in the other night against a very good Carolina team. But tough matchup to come home to as well.
Always. The first game after a road trip, you see teams generally have a little bit of a lull in play. And, that game last night, that's a good Carolina team. That's well coached. They're well structured. They're a more talented group on paper, and they're missing a bunch of players, but that was one of the more difficult opponents I think the Hawks are going to see all season. They just are a matchup nightmare with how disciplined that they play, and they just never really. They don't make mistakes. It's so rare that the Carolina Hurricanes make a mistake, and the Hawks just not necessarily able to capitalize on it. I got to give a little shout out, though, from last night to Chris, because the Hurricanes have some names that can be difficult, especially when they have the puck constantly. And they did have the puck a lot last night. And, I mean, I was listening to Chris go from Kochetkov to Kokaniemi to, Lajoie. I was like, Chris is on the names last night. And so we gotta give him a little shout out for his job on the broadcast last night.
Stick
thanks,
taps
partner.
to Chris.
Thank you to both of you. I appreciate that. Speaking of names that are hard to say, we got a tweet from Blackhawks fan Cephaloctopus, who was asking for a Max Domi appearance on the Blackhawks Insider podcast. Actually, Cephaloctopus shouted out your interview, Kaylee, with Jonathan Taves last week and thought that Max Domi would be a good guest for our episode this week. And ask and you shall receive, because we have Max Domi with his dad, Ty, as our interview guests on this week's episode of the Blackhawks Insider podcast. And To all of our fans out there, we would love to hear from you at any point during this season. If you have a question for the show, a suggestion for a segment, or an interview guest, just add the hashtag Blackhawks mailbag to your tweet or social media post. We would love to hear from you. So, without further ado, per the request of Cephaloctopus, here is our interview with Max Domi and his dad, Ty. The Blackhawks are on their semi-annual dad's trip this year to Los Angeles and Anaheim. So, of course, we had to have a father-son duo on this episode of the Blackhawks Insider Podcast. Caley and I are delighted to be joined by Max Domi and his dad, Ty. Now, Ty, you have an NHL record for most major fighting minutes in NHL history with 333 fighting majors. So no fighting on this podcast today, please. All right, okay? I'd be out of my element. All kidding aside, is this your first dad's trip together? A second?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is our second.
This is
First
cool.
one was in Arizona. Was it my first year or second year?
First year. No, second year.
Second year. Second year in Arizona. We actually came to the same two spots, right?
LA and
San Jose
No.
too. It was,
Okay.
Yeah, it was LA and San Jose.
Yeah,
For sure.
LA, San Jose,
Yeah.
right.
So it's kind of the same sort of thing, but time flies. Feels like it was yesterday.
Except the Arizona fathers, they actually cleared out the bar at the hotel. And I don't think these fathers here had many drinks. So there's a big difference. But
I was going to say, this seemed like a tamed group watching the
very
game,
tame,
right?
very tame,
Very
but
focused on the
guy,
game.
The Arizona crew had a lot of Western Hockey League fathers.
Oh, there was this one guy, Ryan, you remember the name Ryan White? So I played with Whitey, played for a long time. He's actually from Winnipeg, same place as Taser. And his dad, there's like some iconic footage of his dad like doing some funny stuff at the game to some of the Sharks fans. So if you ever get a chance to look that up, it's pretty iconic.
And his kid scored a goal,
Yeah.
the winning goal.
Oh, yeah.
And he took his jersey off, right? Because they
He
were
started
chirping that
swinging around.
Started
Wow.
swinging around. And he's giving him the finger.
Oh my God.
It was insane.
Yeah, it was all over YouTube. It was funny.
Less drama so far on this dad's trip,
Yeah.
but there is still time, I guess. But
Well, the beauty of this trip so far, I was just telling Max a story. I got very close with Patrick Kane, father, Patrick Sr.
Sure.
And, he in Buffalo, he asked me to come down to warm up with him. Mm-hmm. And he's like, don't stand me up. Don't. I'm like, no, I'll come. He's like, you promised me you're going to come. I'm like, don't stand me up. I'm okay. Anyway, I ended up going for chicken wings. It took too long, so I couldn't go. So we get here. We're supposed to wear the jerseys.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm not going to wear the jersey. I'm like, what do you mean you're not going to wear the jersey? I said, you got to wear the jersey. All the fathers were, I just never wore it. And I'm like, listen, I'm wearing the jersey. So then we get to the rink. I said, put the jersey on, Kaner, because he didn't have the jersey on. He had it in his
Yeah, he
hand.
wouldn't
but
wear
I said, he says, okay, I'll make you a deal. I'll put the jersey on, but you have to come down to warm up with me. So I got to say, I went down to warm up with him, and he wanted to go down a half hour before warm up started, but we ended up going down there, and there was a family there, a type 1 diabetic family, and it was all because of Kaner, why that all happened. And I spoke to the family. They had a sign of Max, and Max threw him a puck, and the kid just got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and that side of it made the whole trip for me to talk to that family. It just got diagnosed, and they read his book to them, to the kid, and the first thing he said, "Can I still play hockey?" Like it really,
Wow.
it was worth the whole father's trip. But then, after all that, I go up back to where Kaner's standing,
How many rows up were you guys?
about 12 rows up. And this
did you see him, by the way, at warm-ups?
I'll jump
Okay,
in when
okay.
he's
I was
done.
going to
I'll
say
tell
he
ya.
was really apprehensive at first for what your reaction was going to be when you came down to the glass at warm-ups.
Right, because Max was like, "What the hell?"
What are you
know?
doing?
So
I had a double take for a
Yeah,
second.
yeah,
No
yeah.
chance.
So, anyway, I'm standing there. All of a sudden, Kaner's standing in front of me, and he's like, he goes to every warm-up. His whole career, he's been going to Patrick's warm-ups. And I didn't know this, right? And so he's very, and all of a sudden, at the end of, Pat gets a puck on his stick and throws it, and his dad didn't move. Right there. I go, "Did your son?" I go, "What was that?" He says, "No, that's from Patty." I'm like, "No way." He goes, "Yeah." he does that, every game to me. I'm like, no way. He goes, Pat looks up and he's laughing and he goes like this. Right? And I'm standing there. He grabbed the puck and he just went. And I'm like, boom.
Didn't even budge.
I didn't move. Him and his father have been doing that for years and really caught me off guard. And then Bill Comrie tells me, who's a close friend of mine, lives out here, and I knew he's a hockey guy.
Son's a goalie, right?
In
Yeah.
Buffalo.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's like a really close friend of mine and Max's. So I had Patty Sr. come down for breakfast with us today, and he tells a story about what he did with he had 4 boys that played in the NHL. Eric plays the goalie, but he goes, every warm-up he goes to, his sons go like this to him with a glove, like, I love you. Their whole career. So Max and I have been missing the boat on all this stuff.
You just
No,
have
I
your own
love you.
unique relationship.
Yeah, we're not.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yesterday, I looked over my corner. I'm like, it's the last time I'll ever see him there. For sure. So we'll put an end to that pretty quick.
I was going to say.
So, Mac, your last goal was career goal 105.
Yeah, he's got
104.
Okay.
Well, I was just going to
And
say,
I will be
Now we're
honest
gonna
with
start
you. I did
fighting.
not know that. I did not know that, but it's pretty cool because
Dave-
I'm sitting on the bus yesterday, and Taser's right behind me, and my dad's right next to me, like across the aisle. And Taser's like got a smirk on his face, and he's
This is
like,
last
he's
night,
like,
by the
he's
way.
like, did you know this? I'm like, no, what? He goes, you just passed Pops, eh? I'm like, come on, what do you mean? He's like, man, you have. I guess he was looking at our like stats because we were right next to each other, which is hilarious. But Jonathan Taves reaches over and hits you in the back of the shoulder and says, hey, you just passed your dad in goals. It was pretty cool, but it was funny.
It was funny, yeah.
So yeah, now I got him in goals and points.
nice.
Yeah.
Long way away in fights. We don't want him to catch me there.
No.
Yeah, but having a dad, like I can sort of relate a little bit to the toughness aspect. I know my dad and you had like a little run in, and he was like really in the moment, like, what am I doing? I couldn't believe that I tried to grab Ty in the fight and he just let me go, and it was like probably the best thing that happened to me back in the day. But as a son or a daughter, you kind of adopt a little bit of that kind of heart. Just having your dad play for so long, not just as an enforcer, but turning into the career that you had as long as you did. Like, how much of that, like we saw you defend Patrick Kane earlier this season, which was really cool. Luke Richardson was really happy about it. Like, how much of your game, do you think you get from your dad just instinctually and having watched him and his career?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think I've been asked it a million times now too, and it's tough to answer because obviously he played for a long time. I mean, he didn't play as long as your dad did, but as far as I'm
You
concerned,
couldn't quit though.
the role that he had, which unfortunately isn't really around as much as it should be, in my opinion, but it's the toughest job in the history of the game, and really sports, because you got to be so selfless, and you're putting yourself at risk every single night. And I mean, we could stand up right now to show you guys that I'm actually taller than he is, which I'm pretty proud about, not gonna lie. But it's also makes me even more proud of him, because the fact that he was fighting some of the guys he was fighting is incredible, and he's the best to ever do it. I don't care what anyone says. So I think there's always gonna be that side of his game, but the main stuff that I got to witness to was how he was as a teammate. And he actually does have some skill. I got to give him credit. He has a harder shot than I do. He had a different curve, so I mean he has that going for him. But no, he has a lot more talent, a lot more skill than anyone ever gave him credit for. He could play, and he's the kind of guy that kind of played up through the lineup, which is again a very hard role to do. And he was always ready. And if you ask any of his teammates, I think that's the ultimate compliment, is when like. There's no teammate that'll say a bad thing about him. So I've always tried to emulate, obviously, those good sides of his games, whether it's the work ethic, the kind of the fearless mentality of like, I'm going to go out every single shift, no matter what happens, to try and help my team win. And that's kind of how, not only him, my mom was very similar too. Both my parents are pretty competitive, so I don't know if you'll meet someone more competitive than me based off of my genes, but it was literally anything to win. And I think that's the main thing that I learned as a kid from him. And hockey and fighting, all that stuff aside, I think that's been pretty valuable. Being a good teammate, anything to win, and just work as hard as you possibly can and have fun. And that's kind of the blessing that I've had to learn from a guy like him, and also all of his teammates that I was around.
Yeah, I saw recently, like when I was looking up more stuff, like Drake also had said, like the rapper Drake, that you're one of the most popular Leafs players ever just because of your heart and like how good of a teammate and a friend you are, just like Max talked about. So Max scores the OT winner in the home opener this year. You were there. You had Ric Flair, and then David Beckham was commenting on it, and Tom Brady was commenting on the goal, congratulating you, Max. What a cool group of people that you're around all the time, post-hockey career. What's that like? And like then I'm curious, just Max, what it feels like to have like all those people kind of in your corner
Everyone
watching
always
you.
ask me, how does your dad know all these guys? So I'll let him answer that.
I know. I was like Drake giving like a huge shout out to you recently. I was like, add another one.
You've had a great post-playing career.
Yeah,
You've done
you
some
have.
really cool things.
It's like your dad, we just live, day to day.
Live life to the fullest.
Yeah, and people kind of like kind of the way we are, and we're honest guys. And
A little too honest sometimes.
There's no bullshit, and
Yeah.
and I think when you look back on life, you just want to make sure that you have no regrets, and that's kind of how I'm living my life. And watching my kid play hockey, something I love to do, and in my other two daughters, whatever they're doing, I'm passionate on, and I try and be there for all of them and balance my kids as much as I can. But I think what hockey has done for our family, and what the legacy he continues to carry, not just on the hockey side, but like that family last night, the type 1 diabetic family just got diagnosed, and they read his book to him every night because the first thing he said, that kid, was, "Can I still play hockey?" And that's the first thing he said when he found out he got diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic. So, those type of things, are memories forever. And when he's impacting like families like that, obviously that makes me proud.
Absolutely.
So not to get too mushy here, but when was the most proud you've been of Max as a hockey player?
Ooh, good question.
No pressure.
I mean, thinking about his NHL debut, or was like a fight, kind of taking a page out of your book,
because I got yelled at the first 10 times I fought. So
Really?
Well, the one thing when he did make the NHL, I said to him, always respect, everybody, and whether it's the trainers or the coaches or, the person who runs the parking lot, or the security people, PR people, all those people and all the teams he's played on have all gave compliments. So as a father, that's what you love to hear. But at Guy Lafleur's funeral this year, all the ex-players that were there were very, very kind, coming over saying nice things about Max, and they all said, didn't matter where, he always came over and shook their hand. So
that's the rule that he kind of gave me, was like, if you ever see an ex-player, you got to go say hello, out of respect for them. Even though it's like, most of the time you're like, these guys have no idea who I am. Like, I don't want to interfere with them and kind of crowd their space, whatever. But that's just it. It's been a rule ever since I've been a kid. Muster up the courage, go over, say hello.
But
and it goes a long way. It really does. It does.
And Montreal's like the hockey shrine of all shrines,
Sure.
right? And you got Serge Savard saying that to you. Yvonne Cornway, Chris Nyland, all these guys coming up by Guy Lafleur's funeral saying that about him. That itself, I think is the proudest I've been, is just hearing it from those type of guys. And he's right. That's what I did say to him, and he still does it, because at the end of the day, he's not going to know. He's not going to really think that way unless someone tells him. And I just happen to play the game, and I respect the past, and I always have respected the past, and I want him to continue that and respect the past. And I think that's a big part that all professional sports is lacking, is respecting the past, because if you didn't have those guys in the past what they did, they wouldn't have what they have today. So.
And going back to Caley's question too about I think I was actually going to be part of the second part of that answer for him and his network and people he knows and hangs out with now post hockey. You know what? I think that's what he just said is part of the biggest reason. Other than he treats everyone the same no matter what, and it doesn't matter how much money you have, the fame, whatever. It works both ways. He's himself with me as he is with so-and-so. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I think that's something nowadays is lost. Because sometimes you treat people like they're not even people, and that's when people get turned off from you. And that's just, he has so much confidence in himself, and he has so many stories. He's a funny guy, obviously, and I think that's pretty contagious in a room, so he'll take over, he'll take over a room pretty quick, and it's just like your dad, too. That's why they hang out with the people they do, and it goes back to what he just said, too, of just the respect thing, and he shows everyone respect, and it doesn't matter if it's some guy walking down the street or if it's Mark Wahlberg. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same amount of respect for both people, and I think that's why he demands so much respect, is because he shows it, and it's consistent in everywhere in his life. So it's pretty cool for not just me, but my two sisters to see as well, and you'll learn a lot from stuff like that. And both my parents are outstanding with that, so I'm very grateful for both of them.
Wow.
So you're speaking of your dad, respect, like your dad wanted a ride from, he wanted a 2-hour ride. I was 19 years old, and he wanted a ride from a softball tournament all the way to Rick Green's place in Peterborough. It's a 2-hour ride, right? I'm like, yeah, no problem. It's Chris Chelios. I'm not going to say no, right? I'm in my Honda Accord, my first car I bought, coupe, that is, Honda Accord coupe. And Chelly gets in the car, and I'm thinking, oh, Chris Chelios, I'm driving 2 hours. I'm going to have a good conversation. Takes off his sandals, puts his feet on the dash, puts his seat right back, and slept all the way. Slept all the way. It was like he got in, and then he said, but we've been close friends ever since. Obviously, your dad and I. And
you guys have great stories. I went to that Mario Lemieux fantasy camp, and I could have sat in there for like 10 hours listening to you guys all talk. It was one of the best games I've ever sat through with that whole group of people. So I want to go back really quick when you talked about him yelling at you for fighting. Like, it's so funny.
Doesn't want me to hurt my hand,
true.
or something like that. And you know what? Like, as much as I try and emulate a lot of things in his game, we are very different players, and I think he knows that more than anyone, especially me. So,
did he coach? Does he kind of like I know
he coached me when I was young.
Okay,
he was our assistant coach, and he switched over to the defensive coach pretty quick. So he coached Darnell Nurse.
Tough when you work together. And
Darnell Nurse.
Cool.
Darnell Nurse, who's obviously a superstar in the league now.
Darnell Nurse, Mark Friedman.
And one of my good friends.
That's a pretty good coaching legacy.
So, I mean,
Mark Friedman plays in
Don't forget it.
He's in the minor league system for Pittsburgh now, but he was with the Pens last year. So you got to give him some credit for his defensive mind, I guess.
That's what I'm talking about.
And if you ask Darnell Nurse, he loved him. I mean, he jokes about it all the time. But no, he was a good coach.
He loves me because I left him on the ice all the time.
Exactly.
One time I left him on for literally 8 minutes straight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He tried.
That's a tough one.
I actually remember that because like he tried and come and change, and my dad's like, stay. Like, okay.
I remember like my dad, and like I obviously played at a much lower level than everybody, but even then he had like hand signals for everything coaching, like cherry pick, play more physical, like this, and if you sucked in a game, he'd be like, and then you just didn't make eye contact the rest of the game.
So my dad would always, that's unbelievable. My dad would always sit in the corner, same corner, doesn't matter where the rink was. It was
corners,
always
there's
right
always
corner,
the corner
away
dad.
from everyone else. And he had a couple, I could tell without any interaction with him how the car ride home was going to be.
Right.
So the classic one was this one was let's go. This one was let's go.
Move your
Skate.
feet.
And move your
Skate,
feet.
yeah.
Like, let's go. Let's
Carry
get going.
it.
This one was what are you doing?
Yeah, very
And
similar.
then this one was shoot the puck. And then all of a sudden, like if I knew I was in one, like, and it was just so weird because like if I made a mistake, one more mistake, I'm like I'm just automatically
I'm out.
look. What does he think? And I turn the puck over or something, and he would just be like this.
Garbage.
And
I
then
got
he's
the
gone.
same one.
Out the back door. I'm like, all right, this is gonna be a tough. I'm gonna just walk home at this rate. So
Yeah, that's the worst
I
one.
watch-
Like, I'm not even.
I watch your dad. Your dad, like I was not even close to your dad. Okay, he stood on the glass. Okay,
Yeah.
your brothers were playing, and he's like, and give the number.
Yeah, and if you did good, you got like
Yeah.
the clap.
And then,
That's
say,
it.
Carry the puck. You say, carry the puck.
Yeah, carry it. Yeah, it's
I was
crazy
like,
how
"Are you
crazy
kidding
they are
me,
on the
Charlie?"
glass. I
He
know
goes-
you're just
he
like
goes,
shaking.
oh yeah, they know what I mean. They know what I'm saying.
He was whistling in the box last night. I was like, I'm
That's
29 years
hilarious.
old and we're in a suite with a bunch of people, and he pulled the whistle out like, to get our attention. I was like,
Some of that stuff is just dad language. I think
Dad language.
universal dad language.
Well,
for
having
sure.
that breakfast today with Mr. Bill Comrie and Patty Kane, like that was.
I don't think there's 3 people that like the game more than those 3. I'm just
Really?
putting that out there. So it was pretty cool.
It was a really cool moment. And by the way, Bill Comrie, he was a little owner of the Cubs when they won the World Series.
He has a ring.
Yeah.
He has a ring.
That's pretty cool.
He has a
Seen
ring.
the ring,
Yeah,
the Cubbies
But
ring
you got
is-
that picture, Max.
Yeah,
You
it's
should
pretty
actually.
cool. Yeah, I
put
should
that
find
picture
that.
Go to the
out.
World Series?
No,
I did.
Oh, you did.
I
Okay,
did with
yeah.
your dad actually,
Yes,
and
yes.
Bill. I went with Bill too, and Eddie Vedder. We were all
Yeah,
there.
I saw the
it was
pictures.
a very cool. It
squad.
was
It
a
was a
very
good
cool.
squad.
And I went to that bar after they won it. It was like a pub.
Oh, I wasn't. I had to
No,
work.
no, the one your dad used to go to all the time.
Oh, Murphy's. Murphy's Bleachers?
Yeah.
Oh, in Cleveland, you mean?
No, in Chicago.
In Chicago. Murphy's. He's a big Murphy's guy.
Not Murphy's. Come on.
What was the Lodge?
The Lodge.
Oh, yeah.
We were there till
He's stolen, like.
we were there until the sun came up. After
I'm
the
not
Cubs
surprised to hear that.
After the Cubs won the World
I
Series.
think it's catching up with him nowadays because he struggles past 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. But yes, I do remember that. He has like one of those little tall tables from the Lodge and like a huge carpet.
Yeah.
And he's taken it from. He has like a carpet that says the Lodge on it, and he's just
That's
slowly
amazing.
stolen merchandise from there.
Speaking of carpet, did he ever tell you when I tripped over the carpet at the Bell Center? Because I was excited to see him.
No,
Oh my God.
Oh, this
I
is a funny
didn't
story.
see that.
I was watching.
Was it
hilarious.
on camera?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know
Oh,
how
I
it
saw
didn't
that
go on like
actually on
ESPN
camera.
or something.
He's
Like
going over to say hi.
we're all on the
Yes.
bench and like there's,
Shoes or
like,
skates? Are you wearing shoes?
This is before the game.
Okay.
So I had like
Shoes.
it was like right before the anthem. So I was like on the bench like ready to go.
Okay.
Oh,
But
skates.
all of a sudden there was like it was a huge presentation. I don't remember what the event was. I should know, but it was like all the legends. Like I'm talking like every legend that is still living that played for the Habs was present, and
Big trip.
like big deal, like really big deal. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I look over and Chelly looks back at me, and I was like, oh my God, I haven't seen Chelly in so long. Like I was so pumped, like you see a big smile on my face. And like Guy Lafleur's there, like all these legends are there, and I'm most excited to see Chelly, obviously, right? Because there's like a personal connection. I can't wait to see him. I don't know how I didn't like understand what was going on, but there's a red carpet that they all walked out on, obviously, and I just beeline it for him. I didn't realize how fast I was going until I watched the video, and I went to just like do the thing where you just like kind of walk across the red carpet, but obviously the carpet just kind of like came out from underneath me. I yard sailed like in the middle, and like the whole Bell Center, like 21,000 people was laughing at me. I'm like, this is just awful, and I'm like so red, but I'm like, all right, well, I'm here now.
like-
Might as well just commit to the
There was
picture.
a real big moment.
Now that you say that, I 100%
If you ever
remember
find
seeing
that
the video,
clip, you
but I
gotta
didn't know
watch
it was
it.
you.
Oh man, it was so bad, but I was so excited
Maybe
to see
we'll
your dad.
play it. We'll go back and put that highlight
Yeah.
as you described it
Oh,
on
I
the
was-
Pretty
podcast.
fun.
Yeah, there you go. That was tough.
You got it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We'll see if we can lay that
We're
over
definitely
the,
gonna lay it over. That's
over the
awesome.
video
Yeah.
here.
No shame.
You were going over fighting technique with some of the guys at the hotel in Los Angeles, weren't you? I thought I saw a breakout session going on with maybe Sam Lafferty and some of the other guys. I mean,
Oh, okay. That's fair.
I mean, but without sharing your secrets, there is technique, right? I mean, it's not just
Well,
like
yeah, I had to make that into a technique because I was too small. And
Okay.
when I broke in the league, these guys were all 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", and they were killers. So like they literally, knew how to fight. And I was a street kid, so I was fearless, and I just had to kind of make some adjustments, pretty quick actually, because there's no way I could have survived the way that, like when I broke in the league, everybody was just standing there, and I had to start like turning sideways and kind of change the whole, made it into an art more than fighting because I was just too small.
Did you ever think about like mixed martial arts, like UFC or anything like that? After?
No, and actually I'm not into that stuff.
Okay.
But I love boxing. When I was younger, I boxed a few times until my dad took me out of it because he thought I was going to really hurt somebody because I was knocking guys out 2-3 years older than me when I was 14, and my dad said, "That's it, no more." So I had to hang up the gloves. My dad didn't really like fighting at all, so And that's why he didn't really like me fighting in hockey. I lost my father when I was 21 playing in the NHL, so that's why I think every moment I share with my son in the NHL now is pretty special.
Very, very much so.
Yeah.
We've mentioned a lot of your connections to former players. Caley's dad. I wanted to ask you too about current Blackhawks coach Luke Richardson. Now, you were briefly teammates on a couple of points in your career with Toronto. Is that correct?
3 times.
3 times. Okay.
In junior.
Oh, really?
In Peterborough. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Long time.
Yeah, and in Toronto, and then Toronto again. But Luke's a very special guy, and I'm so happy he got an opportunity to be a head coach. It's long overdue, and the results you're getting with this team now, I think, just is a testament to him and what type of person he is, and how much these kids really love him, and they're all playing so hard for him. And I don't even want to say that word, but before the season started, everybody thought it was going to be one of those. And I never believed in that stuff, and he knows not to believe in that stuff. But it's nice that they're all really working hard and playing hard for him, and I'm so happy for not only Luke, but Derek King and the rest of the coaching staff. They're and this whole father's trip, like when he said we went the second year, it was just the players. It was just the players. And the Blackhawks, they brought everybody, the trainers, the staff, all the staff and the family. And I think that, the original 6 team, and Max says,
do it right.
Max says, there's nobody like Chicago. And how he's been treated here has been amazing. And it's a first-class organization. It's pretty cool to be here with all the fathers. And now we're doing this show on the father's trip, so this will be a keeper for the books.
It's nice.
And with Caley, of course.
I know, what a treat. I couldn't wait for you to come. I was like, and as soon as Max got signed with the Hawks, I was like, yes, I know somebody personally. Or at least I met you the first day in the locker room, but I'd known your dad for so long, and I saw him at the camp, like I said, at Mario's camp, and I was like,
It felt like I knew you.
It did feel like it, yeah.
Yeah.
We follow each other, or I follow him on Instagram now, so I feel like I know everybody. I know your grandma.
That's when you're in.
Yeah.
You get to follow backs on Instagram and stuff like that, for sure.
But going back to the dad's trip too, it's got to be cool for you, Max. And I always thought, like, you don't know anything different when your dad plays hockey and you get to go to the rink and all the games. And like, I just remember playing like mini sticks in the family rooms all the time, running down the tunnels, gas station breakfast on the way to practice with dad. And then going to all the cool events, All-Star, like all that. I mean, how nice is it?
I never went to an All-Star game.
Oh.
That was a subtle jab. I love it, Caley.
Caley. Come on, Caley.
That's on me. Still, I would have thought you'd been to a lot of this anyway. You're an all-star in Max's heart and my heart, so it doesn't count. But all those kind of cool events, and now probably going to so many more just with your post-career and all the things you get to do. But how nice is it to be able to give back to your dad and be in the NHL and like get to share this experience with him now?
I think it's awesome. I mean, first off, I think this whole father's trip in general, not just for my dad, but all these dads, it's awesome. And it not only is a way to give back, but it's like it's a big thank you. You know what I mean? Because just to kind of show them, not every dad got to live this lifestyle like mine. So just for the ones that haven't lived it, just to see like, hey, this is what my son is living, and this is what they do on a day-to-day basis. I think it's super special for them, and it's something they deserve because the sacrifices, the time, both, I mean, our moms and dads are the reason why we are where we are. And I think everyone knows that, but it's just nice to really highlight that once in a while. So I think for me, it's not just about my dad, it's about all the dads here, and it's great to see, and they're all so proud. So, but no, going back to being a kid, with him, just as you would know, like everyone's like, oh, how was it to watch your dad like play back in the day? I'm like, honestly, like it was cool, but I didn't really watch him. I'd go to the game, and he can tell you, my mom could tell you too, that I'd go down to the wives' room and I would play mini sticks from the time I got there to the time my dad came out of the shower and was like, all right, let's go home.
Yeah,
that
had to be like 3.5, 4 hours long. You know what I mean? So like. Yeah. Intermission, it was with intermission, it was with
sweat. You have to get home, get my bath.
It's funny, like Tom Fitzgerald. I mean, he had 2 or 3 boys, but 2 of them I think are playing pro hockey now. One of them's in Buffalo. The other one's kind of been bouncing around a little bit, but both great dudes. Played with them. Played with Curtis Joseph's kids. Who else off the top of my head?
But Wade Belak was his favorite.
No,
yeah.
so when we weren't playing in the intermission, everyone else would go back to their seats, but my mom would be, okay, let's go. I'm like, nope, not going. So the two security people, like the ushers at the front door of the wives' room, were my goalie for the whole 20-minute period. And that was my lifestyle as a kid. And as cool as that was just like me thinking I was in the NHL basically.
Right.
The coolest part really growing up was being able to go to the rink.
Yes.
And being in the dressing room and getting to spend so much time with the training staff and seeing all the behind the scenes stuff. You're kind of like a fly on the wall because they don't, as much as the guys like say hi to you, whatever, they're just going about their business, so they don't really know you're there, I guess. But you see guys like Matt Sundin, Gary Roberts, Ed Belfour, the list really goes on of these legends and how hard they work, how they treat the training staff, how they treat the media like yourselves, and how they treat each other. Then like their mindset as soon as they're going on the ice, like I saw all of that. And I think that's something that even though you're young, you don't really understand that you're processing it all. But now that I'm 27 years old playing in the NHL, like I have like vivid memories of all those times, and I'm super grateful for it because I think it's one of the biggest reasons why I am where I am today is being able to learn from watching those people. So when I see the younger guys buzzing around the room now, it puts a smile on my face because I'm like, you have no idea how lucky you are right now, and enjoy it because it's pretty special. So it's great to see, and again, I'm very thankful for that opportunity.
It's so true. It's like when I think of, I definitely didn't pay attention to like hardly any of the games when we were there, but like I remember like the bazooka bubble gum, the buckets of those, and that's like the biggest thing. We would go get bubble gum. Juicy fruit.
Did you have Big Red in your
Big
room?
Red.
Big Red was a
and
classic.
Dentine ice. And then like my dad, I don't know why my dad thought it was okay, but there's a lot of kids and families in Detroit at the time, like the Lidstroms, and everybody had kids, but they kind of just let us go in the locker room, right? And like the workout room, and let us play on all the equipment like it was chill.
No
so
way.
like I just like I had my foot at the United, or I don't know if it was the United Center at the time. Like my toe got stuck in an elliptical, and when you talk about like the relationships with the trainers and everybody, like the amount of times my dad had to ask a trainer to like help us with my toe in the elliptical, or I fell off the counter before one of his games and split my chin open, and he asked the doctor in the locker room during the game if he would give me stitches. So like I'm in there bawling during the game, and he comes in quickly and like right away just stitched me up, and it was like what a nice like connection that was for my mom to not have to go to the ER and have somebody right there like stitch you up during the game. So, but you're right. Like the little things you remember that's not at all on the ice as a fan.
The craziest things.
Craziest things.
Yeah. Remember those like paraffin wax bath things?
Oh yeah.
Like that was like another highlight because like we didn't know what that was. It was like this hot thing of wax, and we'd stick our hands in. And I guess the guys back then would do it to like soften up their hands. They've been broken so many times or whatever.
I had no idea.
So like we would just stick our whole arm in there and be like, oh, look at my arm. Like stuff like that.
Everything was a toy in there.
Yeah,
I
know.
It's
so funny.
It's probably not a great idea, but
what
are you going to do?
Great memories for sure.
Well, fellas, we can't thank you enough for coming on, sharing some of these great stories. And Ty, just to echo what you've already been told, Caley and I would both say it's been great having Max on the team. Great personality. Love having him around. He's been great to us, and especially this is my first year on the job, and so
awesome.
really appreciate it. But especially doing this on a day between games, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing this, and looking forward to the rest of the trip and the rest of the season.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank you
for
guys.
having us, and say hi to your girlfriend. I look forward to meeting her.
We'll do. She'll be thrilled.
Does she have a name?
Her name is Liz.
Hi, Liz.
I'm sure she'll bring her jersey by too of yours. So
Very cool.
Ty Domi, Max Domi, that's all we got. Thanks so much for stopping by and checking out the latest episode of the Blackhawks Insider Podcast.
Thanks, guys.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
All right, well, thanks again to Max Domi and his dad, Ty. I know that my girlfriend, Liz, is going to be thrilled when she sees her shout out from her favorite player growing up, Ty Domi. She still has his jersey, so
She's Canadian. That makes sense. She's from Toronto, right?
Yeah, I mean, even Drake still tweets about Ty Domi. So, I mean, the guy, he really is. He's a legend.
Look at his Okay, go on Instagram and follow Ty Domi on Instagram. I got to meet him at a wedding this past summer. My wife was in a wedding, and the groom was friends with Ty, and he's the life of the party. I mean, I'm not shocked he's like on a yacht one day, like dancing with like Tom Brady and Mark Wahlberg. I mean, he's kind of a rock star. He's got that Chris Chelios, Jeremy Roenick rock star status, I think, in the sports world.
I love Ty. I think he's always been one of my favorite players to be, or former players to be around. Dads. He loves his kids more than anything. So this interview with him was really fun because you can feel just how close they are. And I thought they had so many nice things to say about each other, from father-son relationship and Max giving his dad, yes, he's one of the greatest fighters all time, but he also was a skilled guy, had a well-rounded game, had a very long career. And it's nice, like, I don't know, sometimes people forget things like that, or just how big of a heart he has. So if Max doesn't say it, it's Drake tweeting about how big of a heart that Ty Domi has. I mean,
big deal.
It's no big deal. I mean,
No big deal.
So cool. They have such a fun lifestyle, and it was really, really nice to be able to sit down and actually catch up. I feel like I'd known Max forever just because of how much his dad had talked about him and how proud he was. So really cool experience for Chris and I to get to know them one-on-one like that. They were great.
Well, that's a good, perfect little layup for me, Caley, because speaking of nice things and saying nice things about people or places, we're going to have to start Sellies and Chirps this week with Scott Darling. Did anybody hear what Scott Darling said on NBC about the city of St. Louis? He said St. Louis is the worst city in the world, or the worst city here, the worst place to play. I mean, he kind of laid into St. Louis last night. I mean, and that's a pretty big chirp for the crosstown rivals.
I mean, it's a Selly for me.
It's a rivalry.
Yeah, it's a Selly for me. Look, I mean, I think after the Red Wings, there isn't a team that Blackhawks fans have hated longer than the St. Louis Blues. So I know people from St. Louis who don't even like St. Louis-style pizza. So, you know, I mean, it's like...
I didn't know they had their own style of pizza.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Yes. There's a very... And I, of course, can't recall what makes it distinguishable or unique off the top of my head, but it's something, I don't know if it has something to do with the cheese, but it's like, oh yeah, it uses the specific type of cheese, Provel cheese. So it makes it very distinct or unique. It's called St. Louis style pizza, and people either love it or hate it. So maybe that was part of the, also part of the reasoning for Scott Darling not wanting to get traded to St. Louis. He doesn't like the pizza, but it's a Selly for me. Way to hold firm, Scott, and take a stand.
Hey, I give him credit for saying what's on his mind.
What about
guess,
you, Caley?
I guess in that instance, right, Colby's right. He said what was on his mind. We always love a genuine answer. So I'll celebrate it. I'm going to St. Louis in December with the team, so I've never hated it before. Maybe I'll hate it this time, or I'll try the pizza and see what happens.
No time like the present, Caley.
No time like the present.
Yeah, that game against St. Louis will be a few days after Christmas, so Caley, we can have like another cheat meal or something like that and try the St. Louis pizza.
I don't think I've ever. I think if anything else needs to be said about the dad's trip, those guys were eating 24/7. Full fillets after games, despite not having played, full pasta dinners. Like, nobody took a breath. I helped a couple dads try sushi in the suite in LA for the first time. I've never seen so much food in my life.
So whose dad hadn't tried sushi before?
I can't remember whose it was because I was just kind of meeting them all in the suite for the first time, but I'm going to find out. They were like, they didn't know how much soy sauce to put on it, so I was kind of helping them spoon the soy sauce on it. I'm dying to find out who that was, so I will figure it out.
I got to add one more thing from the dads, because one of the dads walked up to me yesterday between the second and the third period. I left between the benches, wanted to go get a little hot water and go to the bathroom.
Thaw out.
One of the dads walked up to me and goes, your language on the broadcast is way different than on Spittin' Chicklets. And I was like, what? What's he talking about? And then I realized that I guess Colby Armstrong is doing spitting chiclets now on a consistent basis. And I was like, I didn't really have time to say, wait, who are you? Like, I didn't know. But it was one of the dads. I know it was one of the dads. It was right at the family room. And I was like, wrong Colby, but okay. That's it. That was my random thought you made me think of. Sorry,
There's
Chris.
only one C squared in the business. Well, I guess two.
Two,
But one
as a matter
Colby
of
C
fact.
squared.
There's two. Don't forget yourself.
Yeah, don't sell
Come
yourself
on.
short, Caley. Come on.
My bad. Sorry, I forgot. We have the triple C's. Chris, Colby, Caley.
Yeah, there we go. Even better. C cubed.
What is your Sellian chirp this week, Chris?
So my Sellian chirp again plays off the dad's trip to Southern California. We had an off day in Anaheim, and you are literally, when you stay in Anaheim, you are literally within walking distance from Disneyland. So my dad and I went to Disneyland, and we specifically wanted to go to the new Star Wars exhibit at Disneyland that wasn't open when I was a kid. Disney hadn't purchased Lucasfilm at that point. So I already know what Colby's reaction to this is going to be, but my question, are we selly or chirping Disney adults? What do we think? Never grow up. Come on.
I'll let you go first, Colb, since you seem to have an answer right now.
As someone who probably has Disney trips in their future,
Yes.
but has not been to Disney in about 30 years, questionable, Chris. But for you, not questionable. But in general, very questionable. I'm not even going to sell or chirp it. I'm going to use the word questionable.
I can't chirp it because I've been to Disney, having lived in Florida a lot as an adult. My husband is also a Star Wars nerd, as is Chris. We have to get the picture of Chris in front of the spaceship, though, that his dad took, for sure. Was that? Oh, no, that was, there's a couple other players whose dads went to Disneyland as well.
I got a
But
picture,
AJ
Caley, don't worry.
Oh, you did? Okay,
yeah.
so I thought you had a ship photo as well.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll celebrate, but I will ask both of you, Chris, like, how much would you have to pay you to wear the ears all day, the Mickey Mouse ears all day around?
You know, I've never been an ears guy. I guess I wear my Disney pride on the inside, but I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, if it got me into the park for free, I mean, sure.
Then you're an ears guy. Colby, are you an ears guy? You're gonna be a dad. You're gonna put the ears on?
I think I will be, because I'm sure that whatever she tells me will be what happens. So
Smart
I'm
man.
Sure, at some point I will be an ears guy, but I cannot currently answer that with a truthful response because I just don't know.
That's fair.
Well, thank you. I
Good
appreciate everyone's feedback on that, and I can't wait until we play the Ducks again, because I'm going back to Disney.
Oh my gosh.
All you, Caley, what do you got for Sellies or chirps?
I feel bad because we already hit mine. I was gonna say snow before Thanksgiving. Are we celebrating? Are we chirping? I've been told this is perfect turkey bowl weather, so I don't know if you guys ever participated in the turkey bowl, but what are your thoughts on getting snow before Thanksgiving? I'm celebrating.
Devastating. Absolutely devastating.
It's hard, right? I mean, look, like people don't understand. I mean, we're still 6 weeks away from the official start of winter. So to get snow in mid-November, yeah, it can be a tough blow to the psyche, as Colby mentioned. However, you know, I'm down for a white Thanksgiving every now and then. Yeah, definitely.
I do have some reasoning other than just my distaste for cold weather, and it's because Rocket, who is our small dog, will not go outside in this weather, and it's a whole production and struggle to put a jacket on him and get him to go outside, and then he steps in the snow and he lifts up his little paws and he like doesn't want to walk in it, and so it adds more difficulty to my life. Oliver, on the other hand, he got to experience snow for the first time this morning. He went down to our backyard and was doing sprints and had the zoomies and was just started rolling around in the snow, the wet snow right away. So he loved it. But then he's a mess, and then I got to get him all cleaned off before he comes in the house or I get in trouble, and then Rocket won't go. And it's just a whole thing, guys. It really is. I mean, it's not like sledding with Caley's kids, which looked like a ton of fun this morning. Like, they were out there having fun. Everyone's smiling. I'm sure you made them hot cocoa when they came back in. You know, Mom of the Year over there. So
We actually had hot bone broth.
Ooh,
of course you did.
love it.
Of course you
I have
did.
vegan
You
marshmallows in
you
the
healthy
pantry,
freak.
and Danny was like, they're not eating vegan marshmallows. So we did bone broth.
Wait, what goes into marshmallows that's not vegan? What is it? Eggs? Are there eggs or
It's
something?
just a little cleaner, slightly less processed than what's the famous marshmallow brand? Stuffs?
Or like Jet Puffed or something like that. Well,
Jet Puffs,
That's not.
yeah,
I don't know if
that
that's the
sounds right.
brand, but anyways.
I don't know. I saw them. They looked a little cleaner. I bought them. They're not allowed to be used in this house. Danny prefers straight, regular marshmallows if we're going to do cocoa season.
Hey, you got to, again, it's all about planting your flag and taking a stand. You got to have good marshmallows for your hot cocoa. So can't
I lost that
compromise
one.
on
That's
everything.
a fair one.
Well, next time I see your kids, I'm giving them real hot chocolate.
I don't think so.
Well, we've got plenty of time, plenty of Christmas episodes to discuss what your favorite type of hot cocoa is or what kind of marshmallows you use. For now, we are going to say so long and thank you for watching or listening to the latest Blackhawks Insider podcast. A reminder that we have a very special guest on next week's episode, Marian Hossa, to talk about his jersey retirement ceremony and hopefully get some great stories about his time in Chicago. So be sure to tune in for next week's episode with Marian Hossa. And thank you once again for tuning in to this week's edition of the Blackhawks Insider Podcast. Remember, send us your tweets, hashtag Blackhawks Mailbag, if you'd like to contribute to the show in any way with questions or segment ideas. And remember, more content is always available at Blackhawks.com. Thank you to Brad Dollar and Southside Jake for the music featured on this podcast. Thank you to our producers, Nick Song and Trevor Bray. For Colby and Caley, I'm Chris. We'll talk to you next time on the Blackhawks Insider Podcast.